Today is June 2nd, 2025. The Green Mountains of Vermont. Beautiful, aren't they? Especially in spring. But sometimes, even the most idyllic landscapes hold dark secrets. Secrets that whisper on the wind. Secrets that refuse to stay buried, yet remain stubbornly out of reach. This is one such story. A story that began over 2 decades ago in March 2004. A young woman, just 17 years old, with her whole life ahead of her. Her name was Brianna Maitland, and one cold Vermont night, she simply vanished. Gone. As if the night itself had swallowed her whole, leaving behind only questions. And a silence. A silence that screams. The case of Brianna Maitland. It's a name that still echoes through these Vermont valleys. A haunting melody of what was, and what might have been. She was on the cusp of adulthood, finding her way, like so many teenagers. But her journey took a terrifying, inexplicable turn. One moment she was finishing her shift at a local inn. The next, she was a ghost, a face on a missing person poster. Her disappearance became a chilling reminder. A reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers lurk not in faraway places but right here, close to home, in the familiar shadows we often ignore. What happened to Brianna? That is the question that has tormented her family, her friends, and investigators for year after long year. 21 years to be precise, a lifetime for some, an eternity of not knowing for those who loved her. The theories, they swirl like the early spring mist over Lake Champlain. Was it an accident? Did she run away? Or was it something far more sinister? Something that makes the blood run cold? The kind of thing you read about, the kind of thing you tell yourself couldn't happen here. Not in quiet, peaceful Vermont. But it did. It happened to Brianna. And so, the mystery endures. A stubborn, painful enigma. The kind that burrows deep under your skin and stays there. Investigators have chased leads, interviewed countless individuals, and sifted through mounds of evidence. Yet, Brianna Maitland remains missing. Her story is a stark narrative of hope and despair, of a search that has never truly ended. Because somewhere out there, someone knows something. Someone holds the key. The piece of the puzzle that could finally bring Brianna home, or at least bring answers, and perhaps a measure of peace. But until then, the questions hang heavy in the Vermont air. Brianna Maitland was a young woman with a spirit, a spark. Friends described her as kind, sometimes a little shy, but with a strong will. She was navigating those tricky teenage years, searching for her own path, her own identity. Like many her age, she craved independence, a chance to stand on her own 2 feet. She had recently moved out of her family's farmhouse. Not in anger, they said, but as a step towards that independence she so desired. She was sharing a place with friends, testing the waters of adulthood, making her own choices, her own way. It was a time of change, of new beginnings. This quest for autonomy led her to a new school, an alternative program to get her high school equivalency diploma. She was bright, she had plans, dreams. But life, as it often does, threw shadows across her path. She wasn't immune to the struggles that young people can face. There were hardships, moments of difficulty. She was, by all accounts, a resilient young woman, trying to make her way in the world. She was learning to cook, managing her own money from her job. Small steps, but significant ones on the road to being grown up. A road that seemed to stretch out invitingly before her. Then came an incident, something ugly, something that no young woman should ever experience. Just a few weeks before she disappeared, Brianna was reportedly assaulted, attacked by someone she knew, or so the stories go. Accounts differ on the severity, on the precise details, but it happened. It left its mark. Her father said she was shaken, deeply affected by it. She even spoke of perhaps getting a restraining order, though it seems she never did. Could this assault, this dark chapter, have been a prelude to something even worse? A shadow that lengthened, eventually engulfing her? It's a question that investigators have pondered, deeply. Despite these troubles, Brianna pushed on. She was looking forward. She had her job. She had her friends. She was trying to build a life. But that assault? It lingers in the narrative of her last few weeks. A disturbing undercurrent. Did it make her more vulnerable, more fearful? Or did it steal her resolve to be independent, to be strong? Perhaps a bit of both. These are the complexities of a life interrupted, the threads that investigators try to untangle, hoping one will lead them to the truth. The truth of what happened to Brianna in the days and hours before she vanished. In the midst of her search for independence, Brianna found a measure of routine, a sense of purpose, at the Black Lantern Inn. It's a historic place, nestled in Montgomery, Vermont. A charming, rustic establishment, the kind of place that feels like it holds stories within its old walls. For Brianna, it was a job, She worked as a dishwasher, sometimes helping with food preparation. It was honest work. It provided her with an income, a way to support herself as she navigated her new, more independent life. It was a part of her world, a fixed point in her week. Colleagues at the Black Lantern Inn remembered Brianna as a good worker. Quiet, perhaps, but diligent. She did her job. She kept to herself mostly, but was friendly enough. She was part of the team, contributing to the nightly rhythm of a busy country inn. Imagine her there, amidst the clatter of dishes, the steamy heat of the kitchen. Just a normal teenager, earning her way, saving up for her future. The inn, with its warm lights and welcoming facade, must have seemed like a safe haven. A place of normalcy in a life that had seen some recent turmoil. A place where she could just be Brianna. Her shifts at the Black Lantern were a regular feature of her life in early 2004. She would drive her distinctive car, an old 1985 green Oldsmobile sedan, to and from work. It wasn't a fancy car, but it was hers. It was her freedom. Her means of getting to her job, of visiting friends, of living her independent life. The drive to Montgomery, through the winding Vermont roads, would have been familiar to her, part of the routine, another day, another shift, another step towards the future she was trying to build. No one could have known that this routine was about to be shattered. The Black Lantern Inn. It stands as a pivotal location in Brianna's story. It was one of the last places she was seen, the last place where her life, for all its emerging complexities, still seemed to follow a predictable pattern. The glow of the inn's lights on that March evening would have been a beacon, but as she drove away from it, into the darkness, that beacon faded, and what lay ahead was not the comfort of home, but an abyss, an unknown terror that has held her, and the answers to her fate, captive for over 2 long decades. The inn remains, but Brianna does not. Friday, March 19th, 2004. That was the day. The day Brianna Maitland's ordinary life veered into the extraordinary, into the terrifying unknown. She had a shift at the Black Lantern Inn that evening, just like any other work night. She arrived, presumably did her duties in the kitchen, washing dishes, helping out. Her colleagues later reported that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Brianna was Brianna, perhaps a little tired, as she mentioned she needed to get home to rest before an early start for her other job the next day. A normal conversation, the kind you forget until you can't. The inn was winding down for the night. Brianna finished her shift around 11:20 p.m. She said her goodbyes, stepped out into the cool Vermont night. She was alone. She walked to her car, that green 1985 Oldsmobile. The car that was, in many ways, her symbol of independence. She got in, started the engine, and drove away. She was seen leaving the car park of the Black Lantern Inn. That was it. The last confirmed sighting of Brianna Maitland, driving off into the darkness, presumably heading towards the home she shared with friends in Sheldon about 20 miles away. The drive from Montgomery to Sheldon, it's not a long one, through rural countryside, past farms and fields, trees standing like silent sentinels in the dark. What happened on that drive? Did she make it far? Did someone follow her from the inn? Or was she intercepted somewhere along that lonely stretch of road? These are the questions that have no answers. Only theories, possibilities, each one more chilling than the last. The night was cold. The roads were likely quiet. A perfect setting for a predator, if a predator was indeed waiting. Her plan was simple. Drive home, get some sleep. She had another job to go to in St. Albans the next morning. But Brianna never made it home. She never made it to that other job. Somewhere between the Black Lantern Inn and her destination, her journey came to an abrupt and violent halt. The transition was swift, from a young woman heading home after work to a missing person, the subject of a desperate search. The night swallowed her, and the silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the rising panic of her loved ones. The next day, Saturday, March 20th, 2004, a Vermont state trooper is out on patrol. He spots a car, an old green Oldsmobile. It's backed into the side of an abandoned building known locally as the Old Dutchburn Barn, or sometimes the Old Kent Place. This was on Route 118 in Richford, just a mile or so from the Black Lantern Inn. Odd, the way it was positioned, not just parked but backed in, almost into the weather-beaten wood of the barn wall. The rear of the car had some minor damage, as if it had made contact with the building. It looked out of place. It looked wrong. The trooper didn't know, not yet, that this was Brianna Maitland's car. He tagged it for removal, thinking it was just an abandoned vehicle. It wasn't until a few days later, when Brianna was officially reported missing by her concerned parents, that the connection was made. This was her car. The green Oldsmobile she had driven away from the Black Lantern Inn. And inside, a scene that spoke volumes, or rather, whispered clues that only deepened the mystery. Clues that suggested this was no simple case of a teenager running off. This was something else entirely. What did they find inside that car? Her uncashed paychecks from the Black Lantern Inn, lying there on the seat. Her cash, her driver's license, her bank card, her migraine medication, something she reportedly needed, her contact lenses and solution, even a change of clothes. Think about it. If you were planning to run away, to start a new life, wouldn't you take your money, your identification, your essential medication? These weren't the belongings of someone who had packed a bag and left willingly. These were the things you'd expect someone to have with them, or to need shortly. The items left behind painted a disturbing picture. They screamed that Brianna had not intended to leave, or at least, not like this. Her glasses were there too. She apparently preferred her contacts, but if she was without them, she'd need her glasses to see properly. Someone had also placed a man's fleece jacket and a water bottle, items not believed to be hers, on the front seat. Small, strange details. The car keys were gone, but almost everything else vital to her daily life, her identity, was still there. It was a chilling tableau, a silent testament to a sudden violent interruption. In the initial days when a teenager vanishes, there's often a common assumption. They ran away. It happens. Arguments with family, a desire for freedom, the impetuousness of youth. So when Brianna Maitland disappeared, the police, understandably perhaps, considered this possibility. Was she a runaway? Had the pressures of her young life, the recent assault, the desire for independence, simply become too much? It was a theory, one that needed to be explored. But for Brianna's family, it never felt right. Not for a moment. Her parents, Bruce and Kelly Maitland, knew their daughter. They knew her struggles, yes, but they also knew her strengths, her connections. She wouldn't just leave without a word, they insisted. Not like this. Not leaving behind her paychecks, her medication, everything she needed. She had plans. She had just started to find her footing with her new living arrangement and her jobs. The runaway theory for them was a painful dismissal of the Brianna they knew. They voiced their concerns. They pushed for a more serious investigation. They feared the worst, almost from the outset. As days turned into weeks, the evidence, or lack thereof, began to speak louder than any initial assumptions. There was no note, no communication from Brianna, no sightings of her anywhere. And then there was the car, the way it was found, the personal items left inside. It all pointed away from a planned departure. Investigators started to listen more closely to the family's fears. The scene at the old Dutchburn barn didn't look like a teenager abandoning a car. It looked more like a crime scene, a place where something terrible might have occurred. The tide began to shift, slowly but surely. The initial runaway theory started to crumble under the weight of the unsettling facts. It became increasingly clear to the Vermont State Police that Brianna Maitland hadn't simply walked away from her life. She had been taken from it. The focus of the investigation sharpened. This was no longer about finding a rebellious teenager. This was about finding a missing young woman who was, in all likelihood, a victim of foul play. The grim reality began to set in, a reality that her family had sensed all along, and the search for Brianna took on a desperate, urgent new dimension. Once foul play became the prevailing belief, the question became stark. What happened to Brianna, and who was responsible? The most straightforward and perhaps most terrifying theory was abduction, that someone, or someones, targeted her, followed her from the Black Lantern Inn, or lay in wait along her route home. A crime of opportunity, perhaps, or something more premeditated. The rural Vermont roads, dark and sparsely populated at that late hour, could have provided the perfect cover for such an act. She was a young woman, alone, vulnerable. This theory chills to the bone. Then there were whispers, rumors, talk of the local drug scene. Brianna, like many young people, had acquaintances who were reportedly involved with drugs. Could she have somehow got caught up in something dangerous? Owed someone money? Witnessed something she shouldn't have? Investigators explored this angle extensively. They looked into the people she knew, the circles she might have brushed against. It's a murky world, the drug trade, full of shadows and potential for violence. Could this have been a motive? It was a possibility that could not be ignored, however uncomfortable. Inevitably, connections to other cases were considered. Vermont is a small state. Unsolved disappearances tend to stand out. Some wondered if there was a link to Maura Murray, another young woman who had vanished in New Hampshire just a month before Brianna in February 2004. Two young women gone without a trace in relatively close proximity, both geographically and in time. Was it a coincidence or something more sinister? Investigators looked for commonalities, for any thread that might tie these cases together. But so far, no definitive link has ever been established. Each case remains its own painful mystery. The theories, they multiply, some more plausible than others. Was it someone she knew, the ex-boyfriend from the alleged assault, someone she met that night, or a complete stranger, a predator passing through? Each avenue has been explored, each tip followed up. But the web of speculation, while dense, has yet to yield a solid, irrefutable answer. It's a frustrating reality for investigators and for Brianna's loved ones. So many questions, so many possibilities, but the central truth of her fate remains agonizingly elusive, hidden somewhere in the tangled threads of that March night. More than 20 years have passed since Brianna Maitland disappeared. 2 decades, an immense span of time. But the search for answers has never truly stopped. The Vermont State Police have kept her case open, active. It's a cold case, yes, but not a forgotten one. Local investigators have worked tirelessly, chasing down leads, re-interviewing witnesses, re-examining evidence. Federal agencies like the FBI have also lent their expertise at various points, offering resources and a fresh perspective. The commitment to finding Brianna, or at least finding out what happened to her, remains. Over the years, advancements in forensic technology have offered new glimmers of hope. Evidence collected from Brianna's car, from the scene at the old Dutchburn barn, has been subjected to new rounds of testing. DNA analysis, far more sophisticated now than it was in 2004, has been a key focus. Were there traces of an unknown individual in her car? On her belongings? Investigators have looked for that one microscopic clue that could break the case wide open. This painstaking work continues, often behind the scenes, away from the glare of public attention. But it continues nonetheless. Recognizing that someone, somewhere, likely holds crucial information, a significant financial reward has been offered. Money talks, as they say. And the hope is that a substantial sum might compel a person with knowledge, perhaps someone who was scared to come forward before, or someone whose loyalties have shifted over time, to finally speak up. The reward serves as a constant reminder. This case is not closed. The search for truth is ongoing, and any piece of information, no matter how small it might seem, could be the key that unlocks this decades-old mystery. The passage of time can be both an enemy and an ally in cold cases. Memories fade, witnesses move or pass away, physical evidence can degrade, but time can also loosen tongues, relationships change, guilt can become a heavy burden. Investigators hope that the relentless passage of these 21 years might eventually work in their favor, that someone's conscience or their circumstances will lead them to do the right thing, to provide the information that will finally bring an end to the searching and the not knowing. Hope against the odds persists. The disappearance of Brianna Maitland didn't just shatter one family, it sent ripples of shock and sorrow through her entire community. Vermont is known for its tight-knit towns, places where people know their neighbors. The vanishing of a young woman, under such mysterious and potentially violent circumstances, was a profound blow. It eroded that sense of safety, that feeling of idyllic rural peace. It left a scar, a lingering unease. For many in Montgomery, Richford, and the surrounding areas, Brianna's face on a missing person poster became a constant sad reminder of an unanswered question. For Brianna's family, her parents, Bruce and Kelly, her siblings, the past 2 decades have been an unimaginable ordeal, a journey through grief, frustration, and a hope that refuses to be extinguished. They have been public advocates for their daughter, keeping her story alive, pushing for answers, enduring the pain of anniversaries and birthdays that pass without her. Their strength, their unwavering determination to find out what happened to Brianna, is a testament to their love. They live with a void that can never truly be filled, only understood if, one day, the truth comes out. Their vigil is unending. Keeping Brianna's story in the public consciousness is crucial. Media coverage, documentaries, online forums dedicated to her case, they all play a part. They ensure that she is not forgotten. They remind people that this is not just an old story, but an active mystery with a real family at its heart, desperate for closure. Public awareness can generate new leads. Someone who didn't realize the significance of something they saw or heard back in 2004 might see her story today and make that vital connection. Every share, every conversation, keeps the possibility of a breakthrough alive. This is why we tell these stories, not just to recount a tragedy, but to ignite action, to appeal to that one person, or perhaps more than one, who knows something. Something about the night of March 19th, 2004. Something about the old Dutch burn barn. Something about Brianna Maitland. Even the smallest detail, something you might have dismissed as unimportant, could be the missing piece. If you know anything at all, please come forward. Contact the Vermont State Police. Help bring an end to this long, painful wait. Help bring Brianna Maitland and the truth home. There is still hope for answers. There has to be.